Lineage begins with a happy couple of Paris and Torres off to work. Torres is uncharacteristically cheerful and complimentary to her staff, but it's too early to assume that she's been possessed by an alien, so we'll give her the benefit of the doubt.
I don't remember giving you permission to work here.
Yep, false alarm. Go about your business, everyone. Torres suddenly starts to collapse.
I'm detecting another life sign.
Where?
Inside Lieutenant Torres. It could be a parasite.
Oh, might have spoken too soon. She is possessed. Was this that Star Trek Stargate crossover somebody was bound to make eventually? No, actually, Seven has figured out it's not a parasite. Torres is pregnant. Guess that's what it takes to improve her mood. After the titles, the doctor says that she's 7 weeks along, and the fainting is nothing to worry about. Oh, and she might just be emotionally volatile. His words, easy to say when you are immune to physical harm. There's already disagreement on finding out what the baby's sex is, but Tom acquiesces to Torres' wishes. They'll wait and find out later. Give this whole thing a little time to sink in. They're not even back to their quarters before the enormity of the preparations that will be needed nearly overwhelm them, but they're happy nevertheless with their little secret. For the 10 seconds that it is one. Icheb is patient zero for the spread of the secret. He didn't think that it was one.
Omar Shalash. Good news has no clothes.
Thank God Neelix is nothing but bad news.
Now, my good news would be learning that I'll be the godfather.
Wow, just spring that on him 5 minutes after he found out. Maybe give them a chance to acclimate before trying to push your way into their lives. Torres has been found out too as Chakotay and Janeway swing by, offering time off to mentally adjust, and since she fell down earlier. But she just wants to work like normal. Harry, meanwhile, drops in on Tom to comment on how all those extra things like late-night holodeck sessions are going to go away.
Maybe that's what pregnancy's for. Time to let reality sink in.
I really can't honestly tell if you're being serious or not. I mean, this is a man who once said that he could remember being in his mother's womb, so let's just dismiss that. Besides, pregnancy is related to sex, and we all know that's Harry's kryptonite. So Paris swings by to see Tuvok, as the one person who doesn't know about the secret here, but also the one who best knows what it's like to be a father. At least in Tom's circle, you know. Obviously there are other parents around, but he interacts with Tuvok on a regular basis, even if it's mostly to annoy him. Tuvok makes the rather astute point that you have to be prepared for paradox when dealing with children, and I for one fervently agree. I'll give you an example from my own experience. When my kids were 2, I put up a gate to stop them from getting into the kitchen. And above the gate, a set of swinging doors like you see in an Old West saloon, with a hook that would keep them closed. So any adult can get through, but no little kid could. Or so I thought. But when I was gone, they would demonstrate shocking intelligence. They constructed a tower to get up high enough to then be able to reach the latch with a toy sword through the tiny gap between the 2 doors in order to undo the latch and allow them to get into the kitchen. Now, having displayed the brain power to build this tower that was practically up to code, they would then proceed with the real reason they got into the kitchen to see who could throw a gallon of milk the farthest. Low cunning describes kids to a T, because they're so small, so cunning, and so stupid. That evening, Tom tries the romantic dinner, but the day has been so full of unsolicited advice that it hangs over them like a storm cloud. And when Tom makes a joke about Torres being a Klingon mother, lightning strikes. But she realizes finally that she's overreacting. But there's not even time to recover from that before there's more news about the baby. Seems that they're giving birth to Quasimodo. Torres recognizes this condition, actually. She had the same spinal curvature as a baby, but it was corrected with surgery, just like with her mother. It runs in families, especially along the female line, and that lets the cat out of the bag on the baby's sex. Oh well, it's not that important. Nobody ever died because the sex of the baby was revealed. Actually, yeah, there was that gender reveal party that started a wildfire that lasted over 10 weeks and killed a firefighter, but aside of that one time, I mean, I probably didn't need to mention it. It happened in 2020, and of course, nothing else happened in that year of note. Well, since the doctor can see her spine, Paris wonders if they can see the whole baby. That's really more of the baby experience. Note that, parents-to-be, the spine may be flashy, but it really isn't the star of the show. The sight of the forehead ridges reminds Torres of being with her father, him commenting on how much she's like her mother. But in the present, Torres is having a little trouble with that, prompting some more flashbacks about that camping trip where he said that. The two of them were with her uncle and cousins. You can rest assured this camping trip is a defining character moment. Trademark. The next day, while prepping for the genetic treatment to fix the baby's spine so she doesn't have a future where she's stuck working for a mad scientist, like her mother does, the doctor talks about the preparations he's been making in anticipation.
At our first parenting class.
Well, that sounds like fun. Parenting advice from someone who was never a parent or a child. We took exactly one course when my wife was pregnant. It was the one to prepare you for when the actual delivery happens, and it was a complete waste of time. Oh, it was a fully comprehensive 9-week package. The problem is that it didn't anticipate the possibility of having the babies arrive 10 weeks early. So we went to exactly 2 classes, which had lessons about what to expect when the moment happens, and it was nothing that we were told to expect at all. I spent most of the time away because it turns out those are rather difficult conditions under which for the baby to come out. And when I finally got to see my child for the first time, he was all flopped out, lying there like some frog about to be dissected. His legs all akimbo, arms just laying there. The kid just passed out. And all I could think was, this is not what I expected. I thought it was going to be like in the movies where the baby's all wrapped in a blanket, maybe with a little hat on, and maybe crying or something like that. No, just flop down there like someone's about to say, okay, run that up to the lab and we'll see whether or not this is going to lay eggs. Stupidest thing was that after we missed the 3rd class, we got a phone call asking why we didn't show up, and they said, oh yeah, we've already had the babies. And they said, well, you should still come to the rest of the classes. I said, no, I don't think so. For the same reason that while the plane is landing is not the time to finally watch the video on what to do in case the plane crashes. It's not going to be relevant information, and it doesn't describe what happened anyway. Flashing back to the camping trip, Torres has complained that the other kids didn't like her. But that's not what we see. Instead, it's just one of her cousins who plays a stupid prank on her, putting a worm on her sandwich and being told off by his big sister for it. But Torres is enraged by this and runs off into the woods. And in the present, she heads to the holodeck to see what the baby will look like at that age. Still Klingon-like. So she repeatedly chops out enough Klingon DNA so she'll have a nice smooth forehead. There. Looks fine to me. Who cares if she'll have 3 butt cheeks? Torres goes to the doctor with the list of her changes, but shockingly, he is not sold on the idea of diddling with the baby's DNA for no reason. She argues that this is necessary for the child's health. Dubious assertions that would make even the most obsessive helicopter mom think that she's overdoing it. When she goes to see Tom, he is, naturally, vehemently opposed to altering their child to this degree. But he quickly figures out what's really going on, purging the Klingon in the kid because of her own history.
When the people around you are all one way, and you're not, you can't help feeling like there's something wrong with you.
Tom's counter-argument is that the child shouldn't be ashamed of what she is. She should take pride in it. But Torres so disagrees that she goes to the captain to order the doctor to do the procedure over his reservations and Tom's objections. She compares it to removing Seven's implants to make her human, that it's the same thing. Tom finally notes that this might be the mood swing stuff the doctor mentioned, which really riles her up. Lord knows why that might happen, but it does. Still, while I would never say this out loud, This is certainly an extreme reaction. I think we can all agree on that. To make this happen regardless of medical practicality or the wishes of the other parent, and immediately. Now, obviously, there cannot be a compromise on this. One side or the other is going to have to acquiesce. But they don't have a marriage counselor on board. Geez, isn't that a weird thing to think about? You can rewrite someone's genome, but if you need therapy, it's either cry into a pillow or wank off in the holodeck. Paris tries everything to try to talk this out with her, but, well, there's no easy way to say this. She's pissed off because she's not getting her way. Don't get mad at me, I didn't write the show. So to give her some space, Tom sleeps on Harry's couch that night, giving her time to go back to the camping flashback. She returns from running off, but says that her father doesn't understand how she feels when people make fun of her for being Klingon. He tells her that she's being oversensitive, which is arguably worse than saying she has the prego hormones. At least she was acting pretty extreme in that moment. Here she's just trying to explain her feelings to her father, who thinks that being called Snorres is the same thing as being called Turtlehead. Things get worse when she overhears her father talking to her uncle about how much she's becoming like her mother, and that it's getting hard to live with his wife's intensity. Never mind having a second one of them around.
Now you've got it in stereo, baby.
The next morning, Chakotay offers to take Torres for breakfast, but seems to use this to force her to wind up having to speak to Tom. Except the doctor calls them both in, saying there's a serious medical concern right now, and it's going to require going through with all those genetic changes that Torres brought up. Paris finds this hard to fathom, so the doc hands over a copy of his findings that shows this is necessary, and the procedure really needs to be done tomorrow. Tom's having trouble understanding the reasoning and reads through the report, but he can't make heads or tails of it, so he finally seeks out Icheb, since Child's Play established that he has extensive genetic understanding. Well, turns out the reason Tom can't understand this is because it's bullshit. The doctor made a serious error. Turns out that Torres has tampered with his programming so that he would see things her way. Torres locks them out of every possible way that could disrupt the operation, but eventually they're able to get past those and explain to the doctor he's been sabotaged and needs to wait until he's checked over before he starts turning her gene sequence into alphabet soup. Torres is irate, and so is Tom, and everyone else wisely gets the hell out of there because this is going to be one doozy of an argument. She finally admits how the camping trip ended. She started packing to run away and told her father if he was so unhappy, he should just leave. And less than 2 weeks later, he did. So Tom finally gets what this is really about. She's afraid that he's going to leave her the same way. One Klingon is already a handful for him, a second will drive him away too. But he assures her that this will never happen, that they're not her parents, and that he will never walk away. I mean, the fact that he's still trying to work this out after all of this shows that. In the coda, she apologizes to the doctor for giving him a lobotomy, and the baby kicks and she asks if he will be the girl's godfather. Ha! In your face, Neelix. What is 2 thumbs and his godfathering a Klingon? Boom, this guy. The post-episode follow-up. Stupid Neelix moment is obvious. Can't anything on this ship happen without you feeling the need to get yourself involved? Final score for Lineage is 7 out of 10. It's an important episode for Torres, which delves into who she is rather than the fix something, pissed off, screw somebody that normally defines her character. It's interesting to note how both her and Tom have issues with their fathers, one who walked away and the other that saw him as a disappointment. Appropriate that Tom will later encourage her to contact her father in Author in order to patch things up. That's important to remember with this episode. It's not as if this is an idea from out of nowhere. It's not like Chakotay suddenly always having been an expert on steam locomotives or something. This feeling that she drove away her father has been a part of her character. This is a natural development in light of that, taking the self-loathing to its final conclusion, while also showing why it would be Tom that, well, we should probably save that for the near future.